Adamu Garba is coming out to give his own analysis concerning what is happening in Venezuela, and Trump himself. Of course, is he trying to scare Tinubu? Let's hear him.
Finally, the United States has taken Nicolas Maduro out of Venezuela. Yesterday night, they got into the country, aboard the USS Fortuna, one of the largest warships, and then they used Delta Force to get into the country and pick President Maduro and his wife out of Venezuela and taking them into the US. A classic operation similar to what happened with President Manuel Noriega during the height of the Monroe Doctrine. So as you know, if you read the national security, United States national security and strategy paper, it clearly indicated that they are going to enact back the Monroe Doctrine. And this is a classical display in practice of Monroe Doctrine happening in the Western Hemisphere, especially within the American Hemisphere. However, when you look at this, you will see that it is not just an operation that is conducted by the United States. Earlier, I told you that there is nothing called United Nations anymore. All the powers of United Nations is broken. So the UN architecture is dead. The only people controlling the global affairs today is Donald Trump, President Xi Jinping, and President Putin. So there is Russia, there is China, there is the US. And China and Russia were the principal backers of Maduro until the negotiation that took him out took place. On the Christmas day, there's a specific phone calls that happened between the US president and Chinese president and the US president and Russian president that cemented the fate of Maduro, that restricted the operations in Caracas to be as limited as possible, not to damage the infrastructure and the establishment that was already built by the Russians and the Chinese in Venezuela. And considering the fact that one of the major problems that the US have with Maduro is the fact that he has taken over the oil license and operating rights of the American companies and handed it over to competing powers like China, and that is why the US is angry with him. So since a negotiation has taken place backstage that restored some rights and privileges to the US on the operations of the oil asset in Venezuela, then of course Maduro's time is over. Now what do we need to see next after these operations? First, the seal of Zelensky has been sealed in Ukraine. So it's going to be easy for the Russians to take down Zelensky now. Since the US has demonstrated that they are the first movers to go in and take away another president in another country, then it has given a good justification for the Russians to take over Zelensky and take control of the Ukrainian power. At the same time, we should see China making very strong move on the Taiwan. So Taiwan is going to be member of the reunification with the People's Republic of China. If they refuse to do so in peace, it is very likely that the Chinese authorities are going to drag them by fire, by force to join China. So this has cemented every superpower with the control of their own hemisphere. Russia under the control of controlling Europe, US controlling the American continent, while China controlling, of course, the East and the Northeast Asia. How does it have affected us in Africa? And this is where the major issue is. If you recall in my earlier video, I told you that the crux of the matter when it comes to Africa is Gulf of Guinea. So the US is going to concentrate on Gulf of Guinea because the US need oil from the Gulf of Guinea to complement the oil that they are going to get in Venezuela, because it's hard crack. The oil in Venezuela requires high level of hydraulic fracking to get it out, while our own oil is very easy. So the US is coming to Gulf of Guinea, and the US need oils in the Gulf of Guinea. And unfortunately, in the Gulf of Guinea, there were also licensing right of some American companies that they have their oil licenses also in the Gulf of Guinea nations that were taken over and in most cases handed over to the French. The US is definitely going to act against this, considering the fact that some countries in the Gulf of Guinea are francophones, and the strongest enemy in Africa is the French. Both Americans, the Russians, and the Chinese don't like the French in Africa. In fact, China is really much more friendly with the French than the Russians and the Americans in Africa. So anybody dealing with the French is directly attracting enmity with the Americans and the Russians, and to some degree with the Chinese. In fact, when you look at the national security and strategy paper that is released by the US, they mention that they will do everything possible to protect the interests of the Anglo sphere. And unfortunately, countries like Nigeria, my own country, is an Anglo sphere because it's an English-speaking Atlantic-facing nation. So therefore, the Americans will think that they have preeminent control over this territory because it's actually an Anglosphere. So any attempt that is being done to push Nigeria into the French belt is actually suicidal and risky, and will definitely attract the American rat. Now, the Sahelian countries and every country around Gulf of Guinea need to prepare, because we need to recalibrate and reorganize and restructure our foreign policy mechanism with the understanding that there are only 3 superpowers in the world that are controlling global affairs, no longer UN. US, China, and Russia. If your policies is not in alignment with these 3 countries, then you are a man. In the current world order, the multipolar established world order, where sovereignty is much more stronger than globalism, the only way you can maintain your sovereignty is when you have a nuclear power. So any nation that has no nuclear power is not sovereign, because the United Nations systems that establish the sovereignty rights based on the Westphalian state system is now technically broken. So when you don't have nuclear power, just take yourself as a non-sovereign nation. You can always be invaded, like what happened in Venezuela, and that also be taken out like what they did to President Maduro. So the Gulf of Guinea nation need to prepare, because the next area of concentration will be the GOG, the Gulf of Guinea nations, and any president in these areas that have made strategic mistake will have to expect the wrath of either US, China, or Russia, or all of them. But the French and any European power, the UK, Portuguese, Belgium, they have no power in Gulf of Guinea any longer. Thank you.
Global political analyst Adamu Garba. Yes, now Adamu Garba now. He don't the surface now. All this while he just keep quiet. Now since when Trump don't the blow hot now. Now we can't hear, you can't see some of them they come out from their holes. We're highly disappointed. China and Russia betrayed Venezuela. If this is true, Russia is very weak. They couldn't even capture Ukraine president for 2 years now. These big powers have no guarantee to rely on, even how respectful bilateralism done with developing countries for their interests. US can never even allow China to take over Taiwan. Mark my word. Trump no go even fit catch Tinubu, because Tinubu lives in town. In town hall, different from Bulabu. Okay, he can't even find Tinubu where we dare Trump. Now one puts Tinubu for trouble. I disagree with you, sir. If actually a negotiation was reached between China, Russia, and US over Venezuela, Maduro would have given a safe landing in either Russia or China. Same like Assad. Why would Russia and China allow him to be arrested? You are wrong, Garba, Madam Garba. With China taking over Taiwan, Americans will never allow that to happen. Taiwan is sitting at a strategic point for the American military. They should come and take Tinubu. Trump, please come take Tinubu. All of them, they won't come take Tinubu. It's possible. All this one they make man, he cannot fit. They're not fit. They're not fit. Like seriously, ordinary protests where the mama you, where they take policies when on guard, the mama you know if you talk anything, you know if you do anything. Now Tinubu you won't fight for. Okay, since the invasion of Iraq in 2003, every country that has oil and minerals should have started standing have their GDP on military technology. You can't even own natural resources without the power to protect it, specifically from resource looting US. If so, my brother, we in Nigeria must discuss how to have nuclear weapons, and that's exactly what Adamu Garuba is trying to say. Really, una will be say na selfishness, or how una go take buy una own private jets, how una go take buy una own houses, not only in Nigeria, outside the country, in those countries of those people that you want to go and do what? Can you produce anything? In fact, greed will not allow them to even put their house in order. Even common social amenities, they can't even provide for the people. So now this thing, they won't go provide. Meanwhile, the Tucano jet you guys bought, Gumi was telling us that it was a scam. So where did the money go to? Or they just bought it and left it. They wanted to use it for something else, because that was what Gumi said. He wants to provide a nuclear whatever. Really, political analysts, we hear you.